girl, to get married, build a family. That's the move, right, Adam? Yeah. Aaron, that's the move, right? Okay. Morning. Okay, we are on Chofam and Aleph. We are near the finishing of the parak. If you know, we had left over some math. There was a Gemara earlier in the Masechta that dealt with math, equations of a round sukkah, and maybe we'll get to it on Monday. Just to see. Here today we are on Chofam and Aleph. We are on 28. In the Odd Scroll, we are on 28, 28.2. So again, we were talking yesterday about Tumas Mace. Right? We were talking about the Chotzolos. We said that the Chotzolos, which we're going to see two opinions what Chotzolos are. Either Chotzolos are mat, or Chotzolos are bags that sometimes the shepherd would use this bag as a pillow. And we have the Mishnah states a machloket between Rav Dosa and the Chachamim regarding the Chotzolot. So again, the Mishnah, if you look on the Gemara 28.2 on the first bottom of the left column, Tman Hatam, we learned in the Mishnah, Kol HaChotzolot, all these Chotzolot. Again, doesn't say what Chotzolot means. Doesn't use the word Machzelet, use the word Chotzolot. Till now we've been talking about mats, Machzelet, Haklanim, mats made out of reeds, or sometimes mats made of other material. Now we're talking about Chotzolot. We're going to translate that soon. So we have a machlokas Tamei and Tumat Mei. Rav Dosa says it's used as a utensil. It has the ability to contract contamination, but it's not used for lying down purposes, and therefore it's not going to be Mitamei Tumat Madras. It's not going to become the contamination that has that high level, like we spoke about yesterday, that if there's something called Tumat Madras, that if something that's designated for laying down purposes, sitting on purposes as a bed or a chair, that's subject to a certain higher level contamination that when a nida or a zav or a zava, certain people that are contaminated, if they will lie down on it, the item will retain the same level of contamination of the one who went on it. In general, we said someone's the source of a contamination. They make something a child, a tolda, and that child is considered a rishon l'tumah. It is a first generation, and if it's a first generation or child, it's not it's the offspring, and it's not the dad. An offspring, a rishon, does not have the same power to contaminate certain things than the actual source. But we said there's a special halacha, the table, the chair. Sorry, the chair, not the table, the chair, the bed of a nida, something that's used for sleeping, for sitting, would retain the same level. Contamination would be also of the nida. It would also become a av atoma, a chief toma. And we said, what's the difference between an av, father, an av atoma, and a rishon toma? We said that the source of the toma has the ability, or something that's an av, a dad, could contaminate a person, contaminate a utensil, food, and drinks. But something that's a rishon l'tumah, next generation doesn't have the same power as the dad. That rishon cannot contaminate a person or utensil. But if it's a midras, it became the status of the av, and it could contaminate person or utensil. That bed or that chair. Okay, so we have a machloket in the Mishnah. What is the status of this chotzolot? This chotzolot, whether it's a mat or whether it's used as a shepherd's bag, but sometimes he might use it for. Do we say that it's used enough for a pillow that it will be, and lying down, that it's to be considered designated for lying down? So that's the question in the machloket. The first opinion says chotzolot is mitame tumat made. It's only susceptible to contamination, other contaminations, but it's not considered for sleeping. The chamamom midras, it's also considered for sleeping. So that was what we said yesterday. Now the Gemara, the bottom of the page at 28.2, is trying to define the case. My chotzolot. What is these chotzolot that we say now? For our purposes, for us today, we are concerned about schach. We're in the Succah. So let's put to the side whether this chotzolot, whether it has a status of a bed or whether it has a status of a utensil. And by the end of the day, both opinions say that it is susceptible contamination. The question is, what level of contamination is this chotzolot susceptible to? And if it's susceptible contamination, then it should not be able to be used for schach, right? Because we have a law regarding schach, that something that has ability to become contaminated, a material that has the ability to become contaminated cannot be used as what? As schach. Metal poles cannot be used as schach. You can't cover your sukkah with metal poles. That's going to be my schach, because it has the ability to be contaminated. I can't take apples and oranges and say, I want to make a whole sukkah, decorate my sukkah with apples. I'm not decorated. I want to make it as schach. I want to put that, decorations, we said there are more allowances for decoration, but it's not being served as a cover. But if I want to cover my sukkah just with apples, somehow I want to have my apples, that's going to be my schach, I can't do it. Because apples have the ability to become contaminated, right? If I want to hang an apple for decorative purpose, I could hang an apple, right? But I can't go ahead and make the whole sukkah, the whole cover made out of apples and oranges, because these are things that are susceptible to contamination. So here, everybody agrees the chotzolot are susceptible to contamination, whatever that. So now the Gemara says, my chotzolot. What are chotzolot? What is this item that you say has the ability to become contaminated? So now look at the Gemara. Now turn to page 28.3. Amar Rav Avdimi bar Hamduri marzovli. You know what the chotzolot are? Those are the marzovli. Someone said, what's marzovli? Sounds French to me, right? My marzovli. Amar Rav Abba mizavle. These are the leather bags. These are leather bags. And, sometimes you would put these bags, you would put things in the bag. But here they're using but sometimes you would use the bag as a pillow. So the question is, how much is it used? Is it used enough as a pillow that you could say that it's like a bedding material thing and therefore would be subject to the contamination of a midras, like a bedding, like designated for lying down, or it's not considered sufficient. Look at the commentary over here. I think in the Chpter Gemara, and remember they think they have a comment over here. Let's see what they say. So the Aruch LaNer explains, since it's made for dual purpose, for the shepherd to lay down on this pillow, on this item, the Chacham hold it's subject to just like a bed. Rav Dosa holds, since it's designated for a bag, put things in, when you lie down on it, and many times we say, you know what? Hey, you're using it as a pillow. Come on, take it. Stop using it as a pillow. We need it to carry stuff. So it's not considered like a bed. That's how they explain it. The Chazon Ish says, since you don't use it as a pillow on a regular basis, only when you're stuck, or because it's hard material, it's not easy to lie down on. But those holds you can't consider in the bed family. Okay, so there's the whole question: does this meet the criteria of a bed, or doesn't meet the criteria of a bed? Okay, that's the argument. Now, but Shimon Locha Shovel Machsolut Mamash. Shimon Locha says, what is this actually? This is actually a mat. The Marzovli is a mat. V'azda, and he's saying it's a mat, and it's susceptible to what? To contamination. The only question is what level of contamination. And therefore, according to that reason, you should not be able to use it as what? As schach. And the Gemara is going to question this point. My Razovli, Omar Rav Mamish. V'azda Rav Shlokish Tamei. And Reish Lakish is consistent. He's going to, according to his reasoning, where he explained some other place, he went into more detail. What happened? The Omar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says, Harini kaparat of Chia Bonav. He says, he says, I should be an atonement for Avchia and his sons. That means when a person loses a relative, the first year, when they lose a relative, it's brought down that when they quote the relative, when they quote something of Torah from the relative, we have to see about what about quoting another aspect of quote. When you quote the relative, you say, I should be an atonement. Any pains that come to me should be considered an atonement for that person, for my father, that if someone's father passed away, or someone's, that it should be an atonement for their father. Because let's say the first year is usually after a person passes away, is the year of judgment, is where, people could, that's after a person passes away, there's possible Gehenim that a person might go to, difficult place, there's to atone for all the sins. So therefore, a person says that any pains that come to me should be an atonement for my for the sins of my father. And that's appropriate, Rashi says, to say not only for one's father, but also for someone's rabbi after the rabbi passed away. I mean, the Gemara Kedusha says this regarding a father, and this is only for the first 12 months that a person should say that, because even wicked people are not judged past 12 months. But according to the Chachamim, there are opinions that say that even after 12 months, it's appropriate to say Hareini Kaparat Mishkavo. I am an atonement for I should be any pains that come to me should atone, should be a kapara for my father. See, if it's within 12 months, you would say the words kaparat mishkavo, but I'm like a kapara for his. But if it's after 12 months, you just say the language Hareini kaparato. I am an atonement for him. So I think because it's more if you're quoting your father. We have to look up the details. It could be if you're quoting your father more in Torah passage from your father. Your father taught you something. See, then you're saying I should be an atonement for him. But the fact that and it could be the fact that you're quoting Torah from him, that will help. That anything that your actions or any pains that come to you should serve as a atonement for him. And the merit of that you're quoting the Torah that was his, or you quote some saying that will help growth. So that is that will serve hopefully as an atonement. Sometimes people give tzedakah after a parent passed away. Let's say on Yom Kippur, there's like this Yizkor appeal. People give tzedakah to atone, to be called Yom Kippurim. It's a day of atonement for. Kippurim is a plural. It's a day of atonement for the living, and it's a day of atonement for the people that passed away. So therefore, by giving tzedakah on Yom Kippur, can serve as an atonement for not only for oneself, but also for the people that passed away. Because the fact that you're giving the charity because of them, right? If I give charity because my father passed away, so they are the cause of that charity. Being that they are the cause of the charity, they will have atonement for that, you know, through that charity. So here, there's a idea that a person would say during the first year, also Kaddish. Kaddish is also atones for one's parent. When a person says Kaddish within the year, right? Within the year, part of that is it also brings a atonement for the person who passed away. Because remember, it's only the Kaddish is said because that person, good morning, Mr. Silverman, was the person passed away. The child is now saying the holy words of Kaddish. And what is Kaddish? Kaddish is Skadal Skadash Merabah. The child is talking about how Hashem's name should become known in the world, should become sanctified in the world. And you're talking about, you're praising Hashem, and you're asking that God's honor should be back, and God's name should not be desecrated anymore. So that's a great deed that you're doing when you're saying the Kaddish. So in the merit that a person says Kaddish for one's parent, and because of their parent, they are the one who is saying the Kaddish, and they're saying such holy words, and so therefore that merit will bring a atonement for their parent. So that's what the Kaddish does, and so what did he say? So here he was saying something for his rabbi. He wanted. He's like saying, "I'll take the bullet from my rabbi." The rabbi my rabbi who passed away, or my father that passed away. I should be any pain that comes to me, or he's saying, instead of crediting it to my account, that the pain that I have should go to my account to be a merit for me. He's saying that any pain that comes to me should be a merit for what? Atone for my father. Or pain that comes to me that should atone for my rabbi, because it shows the respect, concern that the child has for his parent or for his rabbi, that is willing to say that pain that comes to him should serve as an atonement. Hareini kaparat, I am a atonement for the death for my father or for my rabbi. So that's what the Gemara is saying. So the Gemara says, Mr. Silverman, we are on 28.3. The Amar Reish Lakish says, Hareini kaparat of Chiyah banav. I am an atonement. I should be also any. Rashi said any pains that come to me should serve as an atonement for Rav Chiyah and his children. Shebetchila, in the beginning, kisheneshtachat Torah Yisrael, when Torah, some laws of Torah were forgotten, when some of the Jews went from Bavel, when the Jews went from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, they went from Babylon to Eretz Yisrael. This is talking about, after the destruction of the first base of Mikdash, the Jews were exiled to Babylon, to Bavel. This is called Talmud Bavli, right? Because there's a Babylonian Talmud, because the rabbis here were rabbis from Bavel, which is where the Jewish people were between the first and second Beit HaMikdash. So when the Torah, when people went up to Israel during that time period to build this, during the time period of right before they built the second Beit HaMikdash, Nishtachat Torah miYisrael. Torah was forgotten, because the people that went up to Eretz Yisrael, they weren't all big rabbis that went up to Eretz Yisrael. Most of the rabbis were at that time, when they started going up to Israel, were still in Babylon, Bavel, and therefore Torah was being forgotten in Eretz Yisrael, was not well learned, not well known. So what happened? Allah Ezra mibavel v'yista. Ezra made a move. Talk about making the move in life, right? So Ezra made the move. What was the move that he made? He went to Eretz Yisrael to educate the people on the laws that were forgotten, the Yista, and he brought it back. He put down the foundations. He set the foundations that Torah should not be forgotten in Eretz Yisrael. So that's what he accomplished, Ezra, when he went up to Eretz Yisrael. He reestablished the laws that were forgotten. But then Chazam and Ishtaka, over a period of time, then eventually things also became forgotten again. And Allah Hillel Habavli, Hillel, the famous Hillel, Hillel Habavli, Hillel from Bavel, and he went up the Ista, and he reestablished. He brought the Torah, wisdom, the laws that were forgotten back to the Jewish community. But you know what happened? Chazam and Ishtacha. When the Jewish people started leaving the main cities where there were rabbis, and they went, let's say they went to the other cities of Eretz Yisrael, and the rabbis weren't there. The rabbis, well, let's say, were in Yerushalayim, or the rabbis were in other specific places. And then what happened was Torah Chazam and Ishtacha. The Torah was being forgotten in those places where the rabbis weren't living, so you didn't have proper teachers. If you don't have proper teachers, so what happens? You don't know, you don't learn. So Allah Rav Chia Banav. Rav Chia went up with his children, the Yizdua, and they brought it back. They went ahead and they focused on teaching Torah to the Jewish people, like it says in the Gemara in Ksubot, Kuf Gimel and Beis. Rav Chia said about himself that I am so thankful, so to speak, that I had a hand. I made sure that Torah should not be forgotten from Israel, from the Jewish people. He would go to places where there were no rabbi, no teachers, no yeshiva, no rabbis to teach in the yeshiva, and he would teach them Chumash, he would teach them Mishnah, and his children did the same thing. That's one explanation. And so therefore he was responsible for Chia and Banav, responsible for Torah should not be forgotten from Israel. So v'chacham Rav Chia Banav, this is what Rav Chia and his son said. Lo nechlechu Rav Dosta v'chacham ha'masol shel Usha. You know, the mats that were in Usha, now we're turning the page, Chafam Beis, 20b. Those mats that were in Usha, shehein l'temeot, those mats are susceptible to contamination. What contamination? The contamination of midrash. Those are soft mats, and therefore people use it for lying down, and therefore they would have the same status of a bed, same status of a pillow, same status of a chair, and therefore we subject to midrash. And therefore, for sure, you can't use that as what? As schach, because it has the ability to suscept to contamination. Bishal Teveria, you know the famous city in Israel, Teveria. It's an old city in Israel, Teveria. Bishal Teveria, Shehein Taharot. That the mats of Teveria are tahar. Why are they tahar? Because those mats, the mats that they have over there are hard mats, hard material. So you don't use it for a bed. You don't use it to lie down on. If you don't use it to lie down on, they are tahar. They are tahar. They're not, and therefore they are tahar, and they will not be susceptible to tumat midrash. They won't be susceptible to tumat midrash. And so what's the machloket? Aman nechadu. So what is the argument between Rav Dosa and the Chachamim? If you're telling me that both rabbis would agree in Usha, It's soft material. It would be subject to Tumat Midras. It's like a bedding. In Tveria, it's hard. So there's no, and everyone holds it's not considered Tumat like a bed. Other places in the land of Israel. Marsavan, other places in Israel, Shivan the Leka the Yasav Alayim, since there's people don't sit on them. Now, these mats we were talking about here are not, they're not so hard. The machloket between the Rados and the Chachamim and other places, the mats weren't so hard. But even though they were not so hard, most people didn't use these mats for reclining. But since these mats that the Gemara is talking about were not generally used for reclining, they used the mats for other type of other things. For reclining, for laying down on, mats weren't used. Whatever the common thing that they used for reclining, but not mats. That wasn't something to use. Maybe you put a mat for your table, you put a mat on your table, right? To eat on. But they didn't use mats for maybe there was some other thing called a rug, certain type, maybe extremely soft material that people use for reclining. But not whatever this mat, even though it's not so hard material, the mat wasn't used for reclining. Generally. But Marsava, so one rabbi holds, Kivin the Leka the Yativ Alayu, since generally most people did not sit on them, so it's Ketaveria Damyan. These mats have a status like Teveria, and therefore, just like in Teveria, they didn't sleep on the mats. It was not subject to the contamination of the dress. So here also, Marsava, but the Chachamim hold, what happens when you don't have other lying down materials? There are times that people will go ahead and designate this type of mat for lying down on. And therefore, Kivan the Mikri the Yashra Alayu, since there are times that a person would designate this for lying down on, Kideusha Damya. They have the status like the city of Usha. And the Usha, we said the mat, it was considered Tameh. It was considered Tameh Midras. It has the ability to become susceptible to contamination through lying down, because there they generally lie down on these mats. And since people sometimes will go ahead and designate this for lying down on, it's enough to have the status of Midras. Omamar. So that's what we see, right? That's what we see. That's where Reish Lakish identifies machsolot. So we see the same way Reish Lakish said that the machloket between the rabbis and Rav Dosa, he said it was talking about mats. That's how he explained the machloket. So we see we found he went on record somewhere else where he go ahead. Meaning he translates, Reish Lakish translates choslot as mats, and we see how he explained that that's the machloket. The machloket is regarding this type, these mats. Amamar, kol hachotsolot mitamin tamei meit. All chotsolot are subject to tumat meit. Divrei Rav Dosa. Rav Dosa said that all chotsolot, we have on record a Mishnah in Idiot. The Mishnah says over there that chotsolot are metame tumat meit. That is the quote that we had before. Divrei Rav Dosa. Rav Dosa said that it is susceptible to tumah, and the way we just explained, the reason for Rav Dosa is because since and only tumat meit. Rav Dosa said that this mat is not, according to Reish Lakish, these mats are not designated generally not designated for sleeping. Therefore, it's only subject for other types of contamination, but not the level of contamination that's brought about by of tumat madras. If the nida would lie down on it, it will not be subject to the, or the nida would touch it, it would not be subject to the tumat midras because it's not used generally for lying down. That's what Rav Dosa says. It won't have the level of tumat midras. So the Gemara questions, V'hatanya, we learned it a Braita. V'chein hoya Rav Dosa umekidvarav. Rav Dosa agreed with the opinion of Rav Yossi. He agreed that mats are not susceptible to contamination. He said that you could use, or he said you could use the mats as sukkah material. So if he says you can use mats as sukkah material, why can you use mats as sukkah material? Because it's not subject to contamination. But you just said the way Reish Lakish we said Rav Dosa, he said Rav Dosa is talking also about a mat. So if the statement of Chotzolot means mat, and you're telling me that Rav Dosa holds a mat is subject to contamination, but we have on record that Rav Dosa said a mat is not susceptible to contamination. See, we have to know the given and the question. The given is we have machselet earlier. We had a Braita that spoke about a machselet, about a mat. There it's clear, Rav Dosa went on record, a mat is not susceptible to contamination and can be used as schach. That's clear. Then we have a Mishnah that does not use the word machselet, use the word chotzolot. And the question is, what does that word chotzolot mean? And Rav Dosa says it is susceptible to some sort of contamination. And now, Reish Lakish says chotzolot means a mat. So now we have a problem. If it means a mat, that means he says mat's us. That means you're saying he said it is susceptible to contamination. When he said earlier that a mats are not susceptible to contamination. If you would say chotzolot does not mean a mat, it means like the other rabbi said, it means a bag. So you could say maybe it's a bag, it has a different law, and they use this bag as a pillow. And maybe that's why it's susceptible to contamination. Or it's susceptible to contamination because it's a bag. It's a bag. It's a bag because people put things in it, they store things in it, that's why it's a utensil. That's what's susceptible to contamination. But if you say chotzolot, Reish Lakish said it's not referring to a bag. Chotzolot is a mat, and you're telling me there, and Rav Dosa says it is susceptible to contamination, but before we had Rav Dosa said the mat is not susceptible to contamination. That is the apparent contradiction in the words of Rav Dosa, but the contradiction is only according to Reish Lakish, who interprets chotzolot as a mat. If you interpret chotzolot as something else, there's no contradiction. Is that clear? There's a lot of cheshbon here. A mat, we have on record of this, the mat is not susceptible to contamination. But he says which type of mat is not susceptible to contamination? A mat made out of reeds is not susceptible to contamination. It's hard material, it's not susceptible to contamination. And here we have, according to Reish Lakish, Rav Dosa is saying it is susceptible to contamination. That's a contradiction. So how's the Gemara going to explain it? So the Gemara answers, you can explain the contradiction. Look what the Gemara said. Look, Kasha. One has a rim, and one, the mat, doesn't have a rim. It's a ring, it's a tongue twister. Gedanpa. One has a gedanpa, and one doesn't have a gedanpa. If it has a rim means that you put something around it, like you see this table, this beam over here, has this rim around it, right? So because it has a rim, it contains something very well. If you have a rim, you have a cup, right? You have a cup, you have a rim around it. You put something an edge, you create a border, now you can hold something in it, won't just slip right out. If you wouldn't have a rim, if it's just flat, so if it would be flat, a flat mat without a rim, that he's saying is not subject to contamination. and that you could use for schach, according to him. But if the mat has a rim on it, then it can hold something, and therefore that's where it is susceptible to what? The contamination. It became a clean, Mr. Silverman, because that rim.
They're saying the rim is finishing it.
It's fit. Even if it's a finished product without the rim, but without the rim, it's not considered a kli.
It's like wearing a pair of pants without a hem.
A pair of pants, it's not usable, so to contain something. But because also remember, flat wood is not considered susceptible to contamination. Only if the wood is, if you create it into a container of some sort, or if it's designated for sleeping on, would it be subject to contamination? So here we're saying once you created that side rim around it, you elevated this, it's an elevated side, then it's susceptible to what? To contamination. So that's where you cannot use it as top. But if it has no rim around it, it's a mat made out of reeds. Reeds are a wood. It's a wood material. It's flat. It's not susceptible to what? The contamination. And you could use it according to Abdul says what? As schach. Meitive. The Gemara challenges with the following. Meitive. We're challenging Rish Lakish. Chotzolot shel sha'am, v'shel gemi, v'shel sak, v'shel sapira. So we're back to the chotzolot, which again, it's not clear what the word chotzolot are. But Rish Lakish says chotzolot means a mat. So here we're describing mat made out of different types of materials. Chotzolot shel sha'am, shel gemi. So shel sham, Rashi says, he translated some sort of French word. I don't know French. The type of rush plant, or shalgemi. Now, rush plant is a little softer. Shalgemi is also like something like a rubbish, also type of plant that we have. The shalsak, if it's made out of, if it's for a sack. Now, sack, Rashi says, is the hairs of a goat, some goat hair. You made this chotzolot from goat hair, or you have sphira, or sphira, Rashi says, is with the hair from the neck of the horse, or from the tail of the horse. You made this item from that hair. Mitame tome mes. It is subject to the tumah of tumat mate, because it's the utensil, but it's not used for sleeping, and therefore, since it's not used for sleeping, good morning. Since it's not used for sleeping, so therefore it's not tumat midras. Divrei Reb Dosa, v'chachamim omer, v'chachamim say af midras. These are also enough. They use it. Sometimes people will use this for sleeping, and they're subject to tumat midras. We'll continue on Monday. So again, Monday will be Mr. Silverman. Because of Slichot, we're going to start at 6:15, the class. The class will go from 6:15 to 6:45.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Slichot starts 6:45. Thank you very much.
Chodesh Tov, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Chodesh Tov. You too. Thank you. Anna, would you want to send to the group and we'll